It's a used GX470, and we're going to see what kind of shape it's in because it was bought used. Now, it's purchased privately from a person in Nashville. It's a little over 200,000 miles on it. He paid $13,500 for the thing. So let's see, did he get a deal or did he get ripped off? Now, it has relatively aggressive tires on it, so the tires will make a little noise. That we're not really worried about. And as we can see here, it's what we want. It was made in Japan. There's the leather seats. A little wear, nothing outrageous. It's got the classy interior with a little wood finishing. Check out the back. Plenty of room there. As you check the undercarriage, you can see it's a lot of complex systems, but they're pretty well built. But let's face it, 200,000 miles is 200,000 miles. So let's start it up because it's got an actual key, not that push button crap. And let's put the brake on, start her up. Starts right up. As we look under the hood, we see it's got that massive V8 engine hidden under a beauty cover, of course. Now, it sounds totally normal, not particularly loud or anything. Just realize one thing. This has a V8 engine. As you can see under here, it's got a timing belt. All right, somebody's already changed it. Now, that's the one main maintenance headache on these. It is a V8 engine, but it's an interference engine. The rubber belt brakes, valves, hit the pistons, goodbye engine. They'll break the engine. So, on these, religiously, you should change the belt about every 100,000 miles. So if you're buying a used one, you want records of that. If they don't have any records and you're going to buy it, tell them you don't have any records of timing belt change. I'm going to have to change it. Price it out. At today's prices, it'll go anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. Having a guy change it correctly with all the parts that need to be changed. So keep that in mind. It's good bargaining chip. If it's running as good as this, but they have no proof, you knock that off the price of the car. Because they're going to have to prove that it was changed. Don't do some, oh yeah, we had it changed. No, you need a receipt from an actual mechanic with a phone number so you can call them up and see if they actually did the work. But you can say it's not shaking, it's running perfectly fine. Just keep that in mind. Now, it's a somewhat older one, being an 06, but it's still got a lot of creature comforts. Not the steering wheel a modern one has. It's relatively limited in what it can do. The information is relatively limited compared to new ones for sure. But it's still got a decent backup camera. It's dark today, it's raining, and you can see what's going on behind you. Not particularly large, but it still works, of course, because it's a Lexus. It's got some complex stuff. You can do height control, you can do comfort, sport, vehicle speed control on or off. And of course it's a Lexus, so these systems still work. Check it out. If you look at the bumper on the matrix next to it, we're going to do the lowering, and you can see the vehicle is getting slightly lower. You can see the bumper sticking up more on the matrix. That's the one big advantage of Lexus. They do have a lot of technology, but it tends to last and still work perfectly fine. But there's so much technology on these things. You gotta have a guy like me check it out with the fancy scan tool before you buy it. We'll plug our smart link in, turn on the think tool. We'll do intelligent diagnosis. There's a vent scan, it knows what it is. So we'll do diagnosis. We want to do a smart scan to do everything. While we're waiting, realize a lot of people are looking for a big SUV that lasts. Generally, these things do last. But I'll give you a warning, as they get as old as this with 207,000 miles on it, some knocky things aren't going to work. I predict that probably the ABS system, some of these systems will have codes and stuff. They often will when they're this old, although the guy isn't complaining about any drivability whatsoever. Main engine and everything, that's all green. That's all green, that's all green, that's all green, which is good. But we do have codes for the ABS. Haha, what a prediction. The airbag and the air suspension. So, here's the codes for the ABS. Battery low, control module, lost communication, blah, 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 blah. I see that all the time. I've told you a million times about this stuff. It's got 207,000 miles. Who knows what work's been done? If a battery gets weak, it can trip those codes, and people don't understand. With the regular scan tool, you can't reset it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to clear these DTCs. So we'll push clear DC. Now we got to turn the engine so it's off, but the key's on, it's not running. And now it's going to clear them. And as you can see now, it's all green. So, we're going to road test it. We'll see if anything happens then. We'll look at the engine and ECT, and we're going to get some live data here that I can analyze to see what shape this 207,000 mile Lexus is in. And you can see right down here, it may be older, but there's 208 points of data. Well, it's color coded. We're looking for blue, but I'm going to look at the data too. 13.52 volts at the body module, that's fine. All kinds of data here. The air-fuel ratio is pretty good. Bank 1 sensor 1 is 1.00 is perfect. Goes between 1.00 and 0.99. And the second sensor is doing the same thing, 1.00 to 0.99. Almost perfection, a vehicle with 207,000 miles. And as we can see, the cylinder misfire count, 1 and 2 are 0, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is 0. They're all 0. You can even see it had a trouble code at 131,000 miles ago where it was cleared. That's a trouble code. The data that comes for the stupid airbag system and all that other stuff, that's not going to be included under DTC. That was never reset to 0. That's why I reset those codes. The long-term fuel trim on bank 1 sensor 1, it's subtracting, and on bank 2 it's subtracting 2.34%, which shows they're not running perfectly evenly. But on any other car, that's not bad with 200,000 something miles. But on a Lexus, that's not good enough. I would say put some good fuel injector cleaner in it, like that ATS stuff I've been talking about for a long time, and clean them out because it's subtracting fuel. It's running a little bit rich. The droplets probably aren't spraying right because the injectors are probably a little dirty. I'd put some cleaner in for that. And see, there's no misfires. It's running quite well, but it's just a little off, running a little rich. Subtracting fuel. Everything else, as you see, is blue. Decent data. So let's take it for a rainy spin. Now, of course, it's a big, tall vehicle. This is what people want. You feel really secure even in the rain. Of course, being a big, tall vehicle with a big V8 engine in, realize these are gas hogs. There's no way getting out. It's this big. It's as heavy. These things are gas hogs. Most of my customers never even know their gas mileage because they say, I'm afraid of checking it. I just know I fill it up all the time if I drive a lot. The best you'll ever get with this thing empty, not pulling anything, is about 14 miles a gallon if you're driving in town. And if you're lucky, you might get 17 on the highway, maybe. It just all depends on a lot of stuff. Now, you take this car, it's got very aggressive tires, so it's probably going to get bad. He doesn't know. He doesn't check it because, like I say, most people that own these, they're too worried it's so low it's going to scare them, make them depressed, so they just fill it up when they need to. And if you listen closely as I'm driving, you can hear the tires. They're loud tires. They're aggressive. Hear that? Wum, 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 wum. Most people with a luxury car like this will put much less aggressive tires, so they won't make hardly any noise at all. I guess this guy likes to drive in a little dirt and mud, and you're better off with a heavier duty tread, but it's going to be noisy. We're at our little drag strip. Let's step on the gas and see what happens. It takes off, but you notice there's no slip. Drive system on this thing has been perfected by Lexus. It didn't really lose power, and it didn't slip at all. And that V8 engine makes a great muted sound. Not exactly what you call a country boy out in the cornfield car, but hey, if you want power and stability, and you don't really care about gas mileage, and you're going to carry a whole bunch of people, this is a pretty good vehicle for it. And consider, hey, he paid $13,500 for it. You can buy an awful lot of gasoline with the price difference between that and a brand new one, let me tell you, a lot. And you're not overwhelmed with technology. What do you got? Fuel gauge, speedometer, tachometer, and a temperature gauge. All the warning things you really need in a car. It is a Lexus. Generally, you don't have to heed any warning. It usually doesn't give you any, but it's there and you can easily see it at a glance. And of course, when you're at a stop, it's pretty much whisper quiet. So if you're not the greatest driver, hey, keep you plenty of safe. But if you're an aggressive one like me, you can have a lot of fun and not get into trouble. And let's say you need a little more height. Well, you just push the button, and there we go. Now it's getting higher. When it stops flashing, it's done. You can drive these things pretty rough, and you're not going to slip and slide. We check the computer out, and the ghost codes are gone. It often happens on these things. Maybe after thousands of miles, something will come back. But it runs good enough. It stops good enough. You can see the traction control works. It doesn't slip. So, even though it's got 207,000 miles, it's still a really good car if you don't mind the poor gas mileage. You want a giant vehicle like this? And you don't want to spend 70 or 80 grand for a new one? Drive system works fine. Everything in it's in excellent shape. And you're going to save a ton of money buying a used one. Now, Honda call them CRVs for comfortable runabout vehicle, and they are. This particular one is a 2012 four-door, got a lot of space in it, reasonable sized trunk. And under the hood, it's got a legendary Honda 2.4 liter 4-cylinder engine. This is Honda's version of the Toyota RAV4. These are a little faster than the RAV4s. Honda makes the best engines in the world, and they also handle well. They corner a lot better than a RAV4. The RAV4s are a bit more truckier, a little more chunkier, especially the older ones. Now, unfortunately, this one's an automatic transmission, and this particular one is a very common problem with these. As I told people over the years, Honda automatic transmissions are somewhat weak. This one has a torque converter problem. Under light acceleration, it judders. Now you can change the fluid, you can go to Honda and have them reprogram the programming for the transmission, and sometimes that lasts a little while, but from my experience, especially with these 2012s, it's going to need the torque converter replaced. Now this problem shows up that every once in a while, under light acceleration, the car judders. Truthfully, they can go that way for years more. I had a customer, drove one, 200,000 miles they went, and they just lived with it. But if you actually want to fix it, replace the torque converter and reprogram the transmission, as old as this is, and that would run anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500. But as I said, you could continue driving this thing. It's been shuddering for over a year. To me, it's only done it twice. Some of my customers will live with it, some of them won't. That's why I always warn people about automatic transmissions and Hondas. If you got a choice, get a standard. They're much better. Now, Honda's sold millions of these things. And yeah, like any other car, they've had problems here and there. But the customers of mine that drive wild, like speed, cornering, they're much happier with the CR-V than they are with a RAV4. As you can see by looking at them, they're not as high as a RAV4. They're a little bit lower, so they're going to corner better. And overall, they're more aerodynamic and really somewhat better looking than the RAV4s are. To me, comparing the CR-V to the RAV4 is the same as comparing the Honda Civic to Corolla. They're both good vehicles, and they both have their fans. The people that like driving faster, having more acceleration, they're going to get a Civic or a CR-V. Where those who value extreme long life, vehicles that hardly ever break down, those people are going to be happier with a Corolla or a RAV4. And yes, the CR-Vs, hey, they ride better than the RAV4s. They're more a driver's car. They're set up more for spinning around a lot quicker. And they have space, but a RAV4 actually has more space inside it. And I've had both CR-V owners and RAV4 owners get well over 350,000 miles out of their vehicles. So they still are pretty reliable, aside from the weak automatic transmissions of the Hondas. And the CR-Vs went to disc brakes in the back before the RAV4s did. So not only do they accelerate better, they decelerate and stop better. Now, from my experience of the Honda CR-Vs versus the Toyota RAV4s, they both get about 23 miles a gallon in a city. The CR-V's better on a highway. This particular one gets 31. Most of the Toyota RAV4s of the same age only got 27. And that's because it's less of a boxy vehicle. So even this thing is a little bit quicker than a Toyota, it actually gets better gas mileage on the highway. And like most 4-cylinder Hondas, you can see they got a lot of working room. There's space under the hood. It's not particularly cramped. It's easy to work on these things. And if you're not too big, they're high up in the air, so you can change the oil without having to jack the vehicle up. Unless you've been eating too many hot dogs and donuts, then you probably have to jack it up a little to fit under there. The guy bought it for $2,000, and it had 20,000 miles less when he bought it. Here's the truth about these things. And of course, the truth about this is, he actually bought it from a relative who was going to sell it for $5, but he gave it to him for $2, so he practically got it for nothing. Now, he's the 4th owner, but originally it came from Texas, so probably not going to have too much rust on it. And yes, it is the 4-wheel drive. You can turn it on, you can turn it off. You got low, you got high, and then a regular automatic transmission. Now, you got lucky come from New York City to here because he got 20.5 miles a gallon. That's the best you're ever going to get with one of these. But when he's in the city, he's pouring a lot of gas in because he gets about 13. Once he only got 12. It's a big vehicle. Going to use gas. It's just the way that it is. Yeah, big tires, high clearance. I'm kind of amazed that it gets 20.5 miles a gallon on a highway. So why do people buy them? Well, 2 reasons. They're made in Japan, and 2, they can basically last forever with very little maintenance. That's the big thing behind these. They're built on an actual truck frame. They got a solid Toyota V6 engine. Now, in the 20,000 miles he's driven it, The only major thing was he replaced the radiator. Well, it was the original radiator, and they are plastic and aluminum. You gotta expect that. He changed the oil. He put new tires. You gotta expect to put tires when you buy a vehicle. That's normal wear and tear. He changed the oil filter. No big maintenance. That's how these things can run. You don't have to put a lot of money in it, even if they got a couple 100,000 miles on them. No, his uncle had a timing belt change, because yes, it is a rubber timing belt. They tell you to change them every 100,000 miles, but it is not an interference engine. So if you're a gambling man like to roll the dice, if it breaks, it stops running, you tow it to a guy like me, we put a new one, and away you go. It doesn't damage anything. And if you really want the truth of it, you know how many timing belts I've seen break on these? None. I've never seen one ever break. I had a guy with 250,000, he never changed the belt. It was still working. Now, this was a Texas car. You can see after a while, the bumper starts to corrode, gets a crack. You could re-chrome it. You have to take this ding out too, but that isn't the car's fault. But let's look down at the frame. Now, it's a 97. I can tell it was a Texas car, because look, this frame's solid, not rotten. You're always going to get little parts that got surface rust. If you're a fanatic, you could sand it all down, get a wire brush, brush it off, undercoat it, paint it with primer. But look at this thing. You find one like this, snap it up. Because the northern ones back in 97, they got quite a bit of rust on them. While we're down here, we'll see. Here's the transfer case. We had the transfer case to run the front, and the back runs on the regular drive shaft off the transmission. It is an actual four-wheel drive vehicle, like a real truck. While we're under here, you'll notice you don't see oil leaking anywhere. These things are well made. You can still see the original gasket still in there. It's not leaking at all. I realize the Forerunners, the early ones, if you take a look at one, hey, they were just a pickup truck that had two doors put on the back, and they got rid of the bed. With four-wheel drive that you can turn on and off, and compared to the modern ones, you know, they're basically gigantic SUVs now. And the big thing people have against these, they say, they ride like trucks. Well, of course they do, because they're trucks. Now, modern ones ride better because they've got all that computer technology they've been added to it. Yeah, as time goes on, you can make them ride better. But I'll tell you the truth. There's nothing that's going to last long like this. These things just keep going and going. And he's added LED lights on it. You can add whatever you want. He's planning on raising it a few inches more, which if he wants to do a little lift isn't going to hurt anything. I'm not a big fan of lifts, but, you know, let's face it. If he lives in New York City, how fast is he going to be driving? 10, 15 miles an hour? As you look inside, yeah, it's got seat cover. Of course, over the years, those seats are going to crack. That's just what happens when you got leather seats. That's why I like fabric ones. Here's the original back ones. You can see it cracks and stuff, but it's not ripped. It's still in pretty good shape. There is leg room in these things. There's lots of leg room. And look, even though it's old, it's got a sunroof. And as we look inside the trunk, look at the space. You can carry all kinds of things. You flip that down, you can carry a million things in one of these. Decent towing capability too. Still got a spare tire. Usually people have lost them by now, but you can see it's been living in New York City, so the rear end, the differential, is rusted. But it's just superficial rust. If you wanted, you could clean it all off and then prime it and paint it and coat it. Again, we can see the frame's solid. This here, that's superficial rust anyways. That's the tow hitch. Toyota didn't make that. This is an added on tow hitch. And although it wasn't painted that well, that steel is still going to last for 1,000 years with that little bit of rust on this thick steel. You can paint it if you're a fanatic, but I mean, really. So we can scan to a lot, hook it up. So it knows what it is. Let's do a diagnosis. We'll do a smart scan. Realize in an old car like this, you're going to get a limited amount of data. It's not like the new ones where I'll have 50 lines. No, there's just a few on these. As old as it is, there's no codes, there's no anomalies. You gotta expect that in these Toyotas. It's just so well made. What I like is a lot of it's still mechanical. Here's your four-wheel drive. You shift it in manually. It's not some computer. It's not electronics. It's a physical connection that generally can last forever. Check it out. You can change the shifting, the electronically controlled transmission itself. You can put it into power so it'll shift later and have more zoom if you're going up a hill or towing something. Let's check the back window out. Hey, look, it's a Toyota. It still works. It doesn't care how old it is. Try that on a GM or Chrysler product that's this age. It'd probably rust and fall off if it even worked. Now, for all its mileage and its age, the engine sounds good. Now, you'll see, it is in New York City now, so you're seeing a lot of the stuff starting to get corrosion. But it still runs perfectly fine. And yes, believe it or not, the AC still works. The Nippondensos that they use on these Toyotas are quite well made. Of course, it's running fine. You put it in gear. It's not shaking. Of course, it doesn't have a backup camera on it, and he added the Pioneer stereo, you know? We're talking about old times. But interesting enough, he put a Pioneer stereo in, but he left the controls to the original radio that Toyota put in. Here we go on the Rhode Island roads, and even though they're bumpy, hey, and as old as this thing is, it takes the bumps pretty good. It rode a lot better than that Tesla I tried out the other day. And this is a big old truck. We'll see what the 6-cylinder engine can do. Step on the gas. And it makes a lot of noise, and it does accelerate. Nothing outrageously fast, but it's a big, heavy vehicle. We're being passed by a Volkswagen. Shame of shame. But it shifts fine. It goes down the road. It's not a racing truck. It never was meant to be a racing truck. It'll get you where you're going very dependably. It's not going to strand you somewhere. And for a big, heavy truck, hey, take anything big and heavy. You kind of sail it like a boat, but it goes where you point it. And you can see the steering wheel stable, all this mileage. Front end's still in good shape. Yeah, you're gonna hear noises, rattling when you're going over bumps, but hey, it's a truck. You live with stuff like that. You know, the new ones are a lot quieter, yeah, but as good as this thing runs, it is a steal. So you wonder, why do people pay high dollar for these things, even if they have 200,000-300,000 miles? Now you know, because they can last forever. Now, you take a look underneath. This thing spent most of its life in Texas. No rust. It was a steal to buy this vehicle at any price. The only problem that you can often have on these is, let's say it spent its life in Massachusetts, in Michigan, Minnesota. You'll often see they'll be rotting away underneath, and you don't want to buy them then. You'd have to do a frame-off restoration, it would cost a fortune. But if you can find one of these that spent most of its life in Texas, and you want one, snap it up, because price the new ones. They're insanely expensive. Even if you bought one of these that had a blown engine, you could put an engine in. There's tons of engines around for these things. You can get remanufactured engines. If the frame and body's in good shape, my advice is snap it up if you're looking for a vehicle like this. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.